things, preparing and bags and what tools are the most important, and being prepared, because you might be the one. Mom and dad might, you know, the first wave, they might be gone. So you might be responsible for all of the children who are maybe at your age, younger and older, because if you know things that they don't know, then you do what needs to be done, which automatically puts you in a leadership position. Not I'm better than anybody, but a leadership role. And if you are in that role, then you should be able to provide what those people who are with you need. And we don't think about that often because, you know, we're young. Well, you all are young. You know, so it's like that's a responsibility now that most of it you can leave in the hands of the adults, but you never know. You absolutely never know. I say all the time, there are no civilians in war.
That's right.
Age is irrelevant. They say age is just a number. In war, age is just a number, because they'll shoot the young folks quicker than they'll shoot the old folks, because they know that young folks are going to produce the future. The old folks are, you know, essentially already gone, if you will, so they're not going to worry about them. So you have a special responsibility. You have to understand the reason that I'm teaching this course isn't because I wrote a book about this and I just want my voice to be heard. We have a responsibility to deliver the word to those who are capable of hearing. When I say capable, I'm not talking about you having the mental capacity or having the brain size or whatever. I'm talking about those whose mental side has been suppressed enough so that they can listen and they can think, but more importantly, so that they can act. That we were talking in class here today about when we were talking about the survival. Okay, so it's wonderful that you have all this information. It's wonderful that you're going to gain more information by watching the videos, because you're going to go home and every week you're going to take a half an hour out of your 100, I think it was 168 hours in a week. You're going to take 1/2 hour out of that, and you're going to find a survival video to watch just so that you will be better prepared. I don't think a half an hour out of a week is going to hurt anybody. And imagine how much information that you will have in a year if you just watch 1/2 hour survival video a week. And so what's most important is not necessarily that you have all this information. That's fine and dandy. Like I said, there's some truth to the saying that information is power. I'm sure everybody here has heard that before. But that's a limited statement, because in our tradition, we take another route on this. In our tradition, a person was not considered wise because they knew a lot of stuff. A person was considered wise because they applied what they knew to the benefit of the community. If you did not do the application part, then you weren't considered wise. So that's the same thing that applies when we're talking about survival information. That's the same thing we're talking about. We're talking about Taekwondo. That's the same thing we're talking about with whatever it is that we do. If it's not applied in a productive way for the community, then it is meaningless. It's a joke. And that has to be at the forefront. I hear the older folks, the adults, especially the ones who are very serious, talking all the time about we have all of these so-called warriors, if you will, or potential warriors, if you will, who really believe that revolution is a conversation. They're not building anything, which is the problem that I have with many of the folks who came before me, is that they were, of course, and we have to give credit where credit is due, those folks who dug up our story and presented it to us and made us more aware of who we are. Okay, that's important. But most of the folks who were engaged in this conversation, they didn't actually build anything. There was no creation or support of institutions that existed that were trying to do this work. That's a lesson that we should have learned. I'm not too sure if we learned that yet. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be behind the microphone. Everybody wants to have their name known by everybody. Everybody wants to be called. Everybody wants to be recognized publicly. That's not the true nation building work. If anything, the most important nation building work is to build for generations, secret organizations, secret societies. To me, that's the most important work out of it. And if you're in the public and everybody sees you and knows your face, then obviously you're not building a secret society. Brother told me years ago, if you have a secret, and I know that you have a secret, then you no longer have a secret. I may not have the information of the secret, but I know that you have a secret, and you can pretty much pry secrets out of people under the right circumstances. If you say that you can't, then understand why your ancestors were enslaved and remained enslaved for 12 generations. It wasn't willful for the vast majority of them, but if you're going to put a hole in my wife's head if I don't do what you say, or you're going to cut off my child's foot if I don't do what you say, then more than likely, if I believe that you will not do that if I do what you say, then I'm going to do it. And then those are what we call extenuating circumstances, or in sociology, in terms of research methods, we call intervening, extraneous variables or intervening variables. Those are things that don't get discussed in the equation. So I'm really, really, really hoping, and when I say this, usually when I'm lecturing somewhere, I don't get invited back. But I'm hoping that everyone here understands that this is not just a conversation. And in fact, really it's not a conversation, because most of you here you might not be aware of all of the specifics, but what I'm saying is not new to you. This discussion is not new to you. The urgency of the situation is not new to you. How bad of a situation we're in is not new to you. Your life's work is not new to you. The question is, what are you going to do with what you learn, with what you're thinking about here? If you're not going to do anything with it, then you're wasting your time, you're wasting your life, you're shaming your ancestors, because they expect you to do work. So I guess over the last 3 or 4 months, I'll say as soon as and Jadeka said, asked me to do this course, or did I ask her, could I do this course, whatever, we agreed to do this course. I wrote down a bunch of things that essentially were questions or statements to the students. And I think this is more important than the discussion today. I want you to think about these. Now, if you want to write some of them down, I think that would be wonderful for you to think about later. We're supposed to, as thinking adults, we're supposed to give you material so that you can think better. You say the child is supposed to learn what the adult learns and surpass that, to go even further with that, to be even better with that than the adult. Well, you're supposed to take the way that we give you to think, the tools that we give you to think with, and to take that even further and to do more with that than we did. So Inia and I created Alphabet Institute. You're supposed to go and create some Alphabet Institutes. You're supposed to go so far beyond that that we will be amazed, so that we can sit and say, oh yeah, our children are genius. Duh, look. This is what we expect. This is what I expect. I don't expect anything less than that, or I'm wasting my time. So questions that I have, or things that I have that I think that you need to think about, or ask yourself, contemplate, meditate on, act on. One of them is, what's your talent, and how can it be best used now and in the future for African people? What's your talent? Have you really sat down and thought about it, or are you just going after things that look kind of interesting, and you know, you see somebody else doing it, you might want to try that? What are your actual talents? What are your actual talents? And how can it best be used now and in the future for African people? Whenever a daughter, whenever a guy, it only happened a couple times, I think I scared most of them off, but whenever one of the guys would come here and we want to take her out on a date or what have you, I would ask him 2 questions, and those 2 questions would tell me the world. The first question would be, you know, the classic: what do you want to be? What are you working for? What exactly is what you want to be when you become grown? And of course, you get, you know, these nice answers. And the second question is, what are you doing now toward that? Exactly, what are you doing now toward that goal? An idiot can have a dream. A fool can have a dream. Anybody can have a dream. But it's in between the person who has a dream and the person who is actualizing it now. Not saying, oh, well, I'm a child, so I can't do anything to pursue this. I'm too young to do anything about this now. Oh, that's, you know, that's for grown-ups. No, there is absolutely nothing that you are dreaming about doing that you cannot be working toward right now. Actually applying yourself in that direction. Absolutely. Tell me something that you can dream about that you can't work toward now. Okay. Second thing is, and I'm thinking about the students here, do you know each other? You should know each other. You're the front line. You should know each other. You should know what each other do. You should become each other's friends. You may be your only friends in another 15, 20 years. You may be the only ones who know, the only ones who are doing this work. You don't want to be alone. That's one of the biggest complaints that I hear from warriors who are adult today. I don't know anybody. There's nobody in my community. There's nobody in my neighborhood. I don't know anybody who thinks like me. Wow, I'm amazed. I ran into you. I came across your book at a garage sale. I didn't know anybody thought the same way that I did. Get to know each other. Don't try to rush it, but get to know each other. Exchange emails. Talk to each other. See what you're doing. See how you can help each other. Next is, what is your greatest asset and what is your greatest liability? What is your greatest asset and what is your greatest liability? What are you best at and what are you worst at? What do you have issues with? You need to know both of those if you're going to progress. My mother sent me this, where's the cat at? Oh, there it is. My mother sent me this thing when I was having a hard time in grad school and I was whining like a little baby. So she sent me this picture of this kitten inside this picture, and the caption said, half of being smart is knowing what you're dumb at. You need to know what you're not good at. You're not going to be good at everything. If you're perfect, I don't want to be anywhere around you because all I'm going to see is my flaws. So you need to know what you're good at and what you're not so good at. Next on my list is, are you a warrior or a soldier? Which, of course, that's early in the Message to the Warriors book. You need to make that distinction. There needs to be a clear distinction. Warriors think. Warriors are political. Warriors are historically aware. Soldiers aren't. They get paid. Next is, who do you feel accountable to? Who do you answer to? Who do you feel responsible for? Who are you working for? And it's sad, of course, if the answer comes out just me, because that's completely and totally un-African. And that doesn't take away from the fact that Africans are extremely individualistic. But it's a communal individualism where I'm trying to be the best that I can be as an individual or a person because I know that that's going to improve the quality of my community. So automatically, that's not selfishness, except maybe in the sense of John Henry Clarke's The Selfishness of Survival, to use his words. Everybody has the selfishness of survival except for us. We're trying to save everybody else, but nobody's trying to save us, including us. We have a number more, and I think these are most important. For you far-thinking people, for you visionaries, what must be done to create sovereign-centered communities? What must be done? You can even say, what must I do? But if it's a community thing, then it should be more of you. What must be done to create sovereign, centered communities? It requires an action. Sovereignty isn't even really a word as far as I'm concerned unless you're acting on it. It's meaningless. Okay. Next, how do we establish and maintain physical, intellectual, cultural, social, and spiritual values that are African? Interesting I say the word create, because I don't really think that we're creating anything. Okay. We're just establishing and maintaining what our ancestors practiced. It's what worked for us. It's what works for us. It's what will always work for us. How do we establish and maintain physical, intellectual, cultural, social, and spiritual values that are us, that are African, that reflect us, that reflect our ancestors? Next, what is centeredness? Because I don't use the word conscious community. I say centered community because I'm talking about a specific group of individuals in the quote-unquote conscious community. Because there's supposed to be a connection between your political beliefs and your character. And we've disconnected them. So we don't even think that we have to be concerned about character, or we think we can have an abusive character but still be African. Your ancestors didn't separate those. You didn't come to make great speeches in public and then go home and beat your wife and children. And then go back and make speeches and people applaud you. You've never been allowed to make the speeches in the first place. But because we're part of the West, and contradictions are a natural part of the way people present themselves, which is one of the reasons why we're seeing so many people lying so much more today. It's growing. It's manifesting itself progressively within our community. Children didn't lie when I was growing up to the degree that they do now in our community. Now it's seen as an asset. Because if I can lie and get over on you, if I lie, no matter how I win, as long as I won. As long as I won, it doesn't make a difference. And if that means lying, cheating, stealing, it's got nothing to do with the morale. If I'm the winner, if I'm seen, if people are calling my name, no matter how I got there, that's what's important. Not good character. Okay. So what is centeredness and how is it different from consciousness? Next is, well, you don't need that. Yes, no, you don't. Next, what kind of people or mentalities do we have to have in the global African community today? Okay. What do we have to turn ourselves into? What do we have to do to become winners? And I'm talking about winners who are still us. I'm not talking about winners who become somebody else. Why do we have to change in order to become somebody, to become successful? Why do we have to look different, be different, talk different, sound different, walk different, dance different, eat differently? Why do we have to make all these changes to be successful? Why can't we be successful the way we are? Why do we have to change? There's something in place that's making us change into something that we're not. What would do that? And why do you, who are supposed to be powerful individuals, why would you accept that? That's somebody else's definition. You can't be powerful and talk about changing for somebody else at the same time. You can't talk about being a man and then you have to answer to another man at the same time. And my father used to say, you can't have two men in the same house. One of us has got to go. Of course, I was the one that went. Okay. Next, do you keep a warrior's journal? On a daily basis, do you write down at least one thought? It could be 2 words. It could be a paragraph. It could be a page. And this is partially Enia's suggestion because she really believes in journals. Do you keep a warrior's journal? Go find you a nice looking notebook, or ask someone to give you a nice looking notebook, or take that nice looking notebook that somebody gave you and use it as a day-to-day journal with your thoughts. At the end of 365 days, go back and read. See how far you've come. See how deep your thoughts have always been. Okay, that'll do for now. There are others on here, but I think that'll suffice for the time being. Okay, now I'll say I don't remember where we left off, but I wanted to continue from a certain point. I want to reemphasize the word accountability, because accountability, I believe, is one of our worst character flaws. And of course, our character to me is the most important thing. Because if you're of good character, if you're a strong character, then there's nothing that can stop you. Okay? You're going to be feared by Urugu, because if Urugu can't break you, which is the whole goal, to break your spirit. Once your spirit is broken, that's the end of the discussion. There's nothing else that has to be done to you. All I have to do is find out whatever it is that are your appetites, or create appetites for you, in you, and it's a done deal, because your spirit is broken. If your spirit is broken, then your inner strength is gone. Your ability to be uncompromising is gone. Your ability to seriously be diligent is gone. Your work ethic essentially is gone, except that which I motivate you to be working on. Okay. So your character is extremely important. And one part of that, and really something that strengthens your character, is your sense of accountability. In sociology, we have this thing that are called attachments. And that is a measure of the depth of the relationship that exists between people. Your attachments grow the more you're in contact with whoever this individual is, or whoever this group is. And the more difficult things that the more difficult the things that you have to battle by yourself, or together with this other individual, or with the group, then the stronger your relationship comes. That's why they have basic training in the military, because you need to be broken into the idea of loyalty to this group of men and women who are around you. That loyalty needs to be stronger than any other loyalty. So you have to go through this difficult 6-week or plus period together. And when you come out of that 6 week, you have an intense loyalty and sense of accountability to the individuals who came through it with you. But more importantly, you have an intense sense of accountability and loyalty to that uniform, because the faces behind or within that uniform are going to change. So these attachments are very important in terms of us developing strong relationships with each other. That's done through a sense of accountability within our community. If I feel, who I feel accountable to is who I develop relationships to. So if I feel accountable to African people, if I feel accountable to African men, women, children, elders, etc., then my relationship with those individuals increases. But it's only going to increase. It's only going to exist in reality. I can pretend stuff, but it's only going to exist in reality if I feel deep down in my soul that I owe you, that you owe me, that I own you, that you own me, that what happens to me is going to have a major impact on what happens to you. That's a sense of accountability. That's having a sense of accountability. So a sense of belongingness, a sense of inseparableness, not being able to be separable, a sense of indistinguishableness. And that's not to mean that we become one like bees in a hive and nobody can distinguish us from each other, which is what Europeans want to argue communalism was in traditional African society, which we know that it wasn't. It's a sense of having a vested interest in your people. That means that I have an interest that goes just beyond friendship, if you will. If I want you to succeed, because if you succeed, then it helps me to succeed. What you do has an impact on me. Is it the problem for us now? Is a problem of external validation. Because we see ourselves as powerless, because we have been made to believe that we are powerless, because we have adopted that as our truth. Power comes from inside you. Somebody convinces you, or you believe that you're powerless, that's because somebody has convinced you of that. You've relinquished that. You've given that to somebody else. So you're never powerless. It's just a mentality. External validation occurs when you have relinquished that to somebody else, and they become the ones who tell you when you're right or wrong. They become the ones who tell you when you're good or bad. They're the ones that tell you who you should like and who you should not like, what you should like and what you should not like. That's external, outside of our community. Validation, approval. That's when accountability becomes null and void. How are you going to be accountable to a people when you're answering to another people? Your accountability is to them. This is like when I have some lost soul or Negro come on talking about who him married to a white woman or sleeping with a white woman is irrelevant. No, you protect first and foremost who's in bed with you. That's first and foremost. I don't care what kind of revolutionary game you want to play. Your loyalty is to your spouse. At least it's supposed to be in the real world. So that's who you're supposed to protect first. So if you're sleeping with a European, then that means that your priority is European people. That means your accountability comes from them. Period. I don't care how you want to mask it in revolutionary, what have you. push come to shove, you're not going to jump on our side. Or if you do, I'm wondering why you're sleeping with a European. We'll need to deal with so-called leadership. Loyalty is a liability. We just essentially, well, we didn't talk about that, but because of the state of self-hatred that we exist in, those of us who are loyal to African people are seen as fools. You're seen as people who don't want to win. You're seen as weak, unless you have, I say, a bunch of degrees and other stuff like I do, if you will, and then people are like puzzled. They know that you're not a fool, but they're wondering, you know, what's up with you? What you getting out of this? Are you able to just use black folks in a different way? We have to understand that if our validation comes from outside of our people, and I'll give you an example of this. There was a black actor back in the 50s and 60s and early 70s. His name was Brock Peter. He was a very, very, very dark man. He was like my grandfather. He used to call my grandfather Mr. Blue, at least behind his back. His skin, he had that velvety blue black skin. And Brock Peters had received a lot of awards in his life. He was an incredible actor. And then the Ebony Awards or whatever, when it was better than what it is now, they gave him an award, and he essentially stood on the stage and cried. And he said that there's nothing better than an award from your own people. All this other stuff I've got is irrelevant. There's nothing better for me. Nothing has made me happier than this award from my own. That's how we should be. Of course, we'll be African. We're not going to be receiving awards from other people anyway. But what we receive from our people is supposed to be the most important thing. To me, in my life, outside of my wife, if you will, the most important things that have been said to me have been from people who were nobodies, who walked up to me and they said, "I loved your book." That made the whole month for me. That made everything. Or, "I appreciate what you're doing. Here, take this $5 for Academic Institute," and walk away, and I never see him again. Those are the awards. Those are the greatest honors that you can receive. But of course, if my validation came from Urugu, came from Europeans, I'd look at her like she was just a little speck of dust underneath the bottom of my shoes. "Yeah, give me that $5 going about your way." But that's not where my validation comes from. My validation comes from us, which is the same place it should be coming from for you. If it's coming from somewhere else, then you can't walk around talking about I'm African because you're not in your soul. Okay, I've already really talked about those things. Warrior's attitude. We've already talked about this. Extremely important. Respect to those who are inside the community. Disrespect in whatever way is necessary to those outside of the community. That doesn't mean go start stuff. And I need you to understand, we had this conversation before too. If you say, "Well, I'm gonna go knock off a European," I'm angry about this, like we were when we came out of whatever it was, Shaft, when it first came out. We came out the theater looking for white folks. Of course, we have to understand this is a cultural conspiracy against us. This is a nation now. Well, now it's been multiple nations. Don't exclude anybody else. The Chinese were enslaving Africans before Europeans were. Don't get it twisted. Don't think that they're on the continent trying to do us some good. The Japanese, the Arabs, as John Henry Clark said, "We have no friends. We have no friends," and there's nothing wrong with that. I got plenty of Africans who are friends. I don't need other folks as friends. You want diversity? Then go find different Africans. The point that I want to make there. No. If you are going to create you a battle plan, an individualized battle plan, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but sometimes we become so enraged, so angry with stuff. To make sure that whatever you're going to do is going to impact the relationship of Africans with themselves, and it's going to bring us sovereignty quicker than if you didn't do it. So if I walk out my door now and just go downtown Atlanta and just blow up 300 Europeans, that ain't gonna help us. And I know that you have all kinds of strategies and tactics in war. So I'm not saying that that wouldn't be effective. However, the question for you should be, how is my specific act going to benefit African people? If it's not going to bring a benefit, then don't do it. I don't care how angry you are. I don't care how upset you are about it. Whatever you do should have an effect, should produce something that assists African people move closer towards sovereignty. If it's one person, if I knew that this white guy who lives down the street, if I just went and just got rid of him, African people would be sovereign in a week and they'd kill me instantly, well, he's gone. But unless I know that, I'm not moving toward him. I need something that's going to have an effect. It's sort of like when I was about some of you all's age, I walked into a drugstore and I stole a bag of peanut-coated peanut M&Ms. And the person behind the counter knew my father. And he called up my father and he told him. And of course, my father introduced me to a nice little switch when I got home. But I thought about it later because he explained something to me. I thought about how dumb it was. He said, if that had been somebody else, you'd have been locked up for shoplifting. He said, how much sense does that make? If you're going to go to jail, then go to jail for stealing the store. Why a bag of M&Ms? We're thinking M&Ms. We're not thinking the store. We're not thinking something that's worth it. If we're going to do something like that, then it has to be worth our time, not just your time. It has to be worth our time. It has to have an impact on African people. And that's whether you're doing something to hurt somebody, whether you are creating music, whether you are starting a school, whatever it is. It has to be something that impacts the future of African people. Not just your little group, not just you, but African people. Okay. Now, this one we didn't talk about, and I think this is very, very important. I'm sure everybody's heard your mind is your greatest weapon. People don't say anymore, well, like they used to say when I was coming up, learn everything that you can because that's the only thing that they can't take from you. We were more aware then, well, I'll say my parents were more aware of the fact that Europeans were trying to destroy us. That's somehow sort of gotten lost in the sauce over the generations. But we have to look at ourselves as thinking weapons. Your mind is your employee. That means it does your work for you. I didn't post something about that today, but I was restating something about that today. If you're not doing what you need to do, if you feel like your mind is the enemy, and I've heard a lot of people be frustrated and say, how can I have this mind? I have this brain, I got this mind, and it seems like it's always trying to make me do stuff that I don't want to do, or it's always trying to make me feel sad. I say, your mind is your employee. Your mind works for you. It does for you what you want it to do. The question is, what do you want it to do, and how well have you instructed your employee? It's like if a child is, and I'm sure everybody's heard of it, child is told repeatedly when they're little, you are so stupid. You just I don't understand why you even open up your eye. You just so stupid. I don't even know why I even look out for you because you're not worth a time of day. You're just stupid. What's that child going to grow up thinking? The child's going to grow up thinking, I'm stupid, because they have, having listened to this stupid adult, they have internalized that, and now they believe that they're stupid. So in thinking that they're stupid and reaffirming that to themselves, they are giving their mind instructions. And because your mind does what it's told, because your mind is your employee, no matter what the situation, no matter what's going on, it's going to find ways to make you stupid because it's simply doing what it was told. It's simply following your instruction. So getting frustrated at it, it's not the problem. The problem is the employer, not the employee. You have to give the correct instructions. Sometimes that may take you going back and erasing some instructions and introducing some better instructions, which takes time. We know affirmations take time. Saying things over and over again to make it happen, to make it real. That takes time, and we're not in a position to determine how much time that takes. You don't give up because it hasn't happened. As I've heard so many people say, black folks quit right before they're successful. So you're not in a position to measure how much time that's supposed to take. You just believe that it's going to happen. Excuse me. You just know that it's going to happen. I'm tired of that believe word. You know that it's going to happen. And you know that this works. You know that anytime you wanted something bad enough, within reason, within your ability, you know that you got it. Because you put your mind to work on it. It made it happen. But your mind is your employee. Think about it in those terms. That's simple terms. Think about it in your terms. It works for you. And if it's not working for you, then maybe you need to give it a raise. Maybe you need to give it better working conditions. Maybe you need to give it more material to study. Maybe you need to meditate with it a bit more. But it does what you tell it to do. Sometimes we act like it's under somebody else's control, and it's not. It's completely and totally under your control. And the last thing I want to talk about today is that application part, where you put what you know, what you think, what you're learning to work. Do not ever enter into a situation where you're supposed to learn, and you're supposed to learn everywhere. As our ancestor said, the Fawohodie talked about, you can learn from the most ignorant of people. You just have to be able to listen. Don't ever step into a situation. Don't ever go someplace where you're supposed to be trying to learn something. And don't first put on the thinking cap that requires action. Don't ever waste your time like that. If you don't do anything, sort of like if you're in a battle, and you have some warriors who just sort of stand there. That side is coming at you. The rest of the warriors are headed, toward the fight. They're engaging in this battle, and you have a few who just sitting there playing cards. And the armor would say counting beads. Them not doing anything hurts you. You taking what you have received, which is in a way it's a gift. For you to be here is a gift. This is a privilege, not to be in my presence per se, but to be in the presence of like-minded Africans. And to be able to understand what's being said without having to go back and read 40,000 books. Because people have been talking to you about this either most or all of your life. So there's no reason for you to walk into this situation with the idea of just listening. With the idea even of just learning something. Your first and foremost goal when you walk into that situation is to ask yourself, what am I going to do with this? It's sort of like how you should approach a textbook, especially a science textbook or something like that. The first thing that you do with the new chapter is that you go back and you look at what are the main points. Then you look at the definitions, the words and the definitions that are given in that book at the end of the chapter. And that prepares you when you go to start to read the chapter for what you're looking for. You already know what you're looking for. So when you come into this setting, then you should already have in your mind should already be listening to what I'm saying or what your classmates are saying through a filter of, what do I do with this? That should already be in place. That filter should already be in place. And everywhere you go, that filter should be in place. You're listening to mom, dad, Uncle Bob, Aunt Sue, whoever. Wherever you are, you're watching the evening news. You're listening to some music. You're listening to some hip hop, whatever. All of that should enter your mind based upon what you can do with it. And of course, that's related to whether it's even worth listening to. Does it benefit African people? Because if it's something that goes against African people, then it shouldn't be going into your ears. If I'm saying things that are working against African people, that are trying to teach you against African people, then you need to turn off, shut down this site and find you some place where you can learn something to do. And I mean that. So if you are a white supremacist here, you need to find someplace else to be. Why would you waste your time learning how to hate yourself more? That wouldn't make any sense. Okay. So in terms of the application, if it's humanly possible, become involved in a rites of passage program. I don't really care what your age is. Talk to mom, talk to dad, talk to whoever else in the community. If one does not exist, then badger them. Stay on their case until they create one. Some brothers in their 20s and 30s, a couple in their 40s, came to complain to me about there not being elders councils in their cities to help them to make decisions or for them to advise them. And they wanted a national elders council. And I said, unlike some folks, they think that they can just go out and do it, just like some folks think that they can go out and become quote unquote mentors. No, those are the adults who lead the children are chosen by the children because they respect what they're doing. They might be nodding in your face, but they choose who they follow. They choose who they respect. It doesn't come in and say, well, I'm going to be the one who you look up to. The children decide that. So I said to them, I said, you all need to pick those elders who you most respect and create a council out of them. Not only does that validate them for the rest of the warriors, but it also holds you accountable to them, because if you put them in this position to advise you, then you can't ignore what they say. It's your choice. You chose them. You decided on who they are. So folks who walk around complaining because there's no rights program and the complaints may be valid, make it happen. And if you're not old enough, you're too young to make it happen, then apply the pressure to adults. If there was a ticket to that concert, you'd apply some pressure. If there was that outfit you wanted, you'd apply some pressure. If it was that car you want, you'd apply some pressure. So apply some pressure to those who know what they're talking about to create something to benefit you. Even if that's something as simple as every week, once a week for 2, 3, 4 hours, you all go to the house of a different elder in the community, and that individual talks to you about whatever topic it is that they know. There's wisdom there. Okay, right passage doesn't have to be some structured thing like the Boy Scouts or some fraternity, sorority, blah, blah, blah. There are many, many ways in this insanity. This isn't our place. This isn't our way. We have to create the best that we can within this environment. Whatever works for us that allows people to gain, and not just young folks, we need elders councils for elders. Because most quote unquote elders don't know how to be elders. It requires a rights program. Most moms and dads don't know how to be moms and dads. They want to be, but they don't know how. So there needs to be rights programs for that. So if one doesn't exist, then create it or make somebody create it. In terms of duration, how long it's supposed to be, my experience has taught me that if the rights program is less than 10 months, it's a joke. Because we have so much to learn. And that doesn't mean it has to be 10 formal months. It can be informal meetings after that. It continues to grow and develop, blah, blah, but if you're talking about, oh, we're going to have a rites of passage program and it's going to be 2 months long and then we're all going to be African, that's literally a joke. It takes some time. One of the rites of passage programs here, before you come in, there's a set of reading materials that you're supposed to have done. These 3, 4, 5 books, and read these articles before you even step in the door. And then you still have reading materials that you have to do. And people take you through things every week. And you are taken to the homes of elders, and you are talked to, and some of them lecture to you, and some of them sit down over dinner. And then after you've been a part of this program for a while, then you are taken out because you've learned some skills. You're taken out into a space, and you have to use those skills to create a facility for you to live in from scratch. You're given your little pocket knife, and that's it. Reminds me of the training my father went through in Panama when he was in the Army. They dropped him off in the middle of a jungle somewhere with a map, a knife, some nylon thread, and a needle. excuse me, a safety pin. And that was it. And you had to, and if you didn't make it, and this was not wartime, so if you didn't make it to the point, you could die in the jungle in Panama, and that would be, you know, all she wrote. If we're going to be creating rites of passage program, or you're going to be participating in, because you need to know what it's about. You should know whether it's serious or a joke. The question should be for you is, what am I hoping to get out of this? What do I want to receive training in? What do I want to become knowledgeable about? When I come out of here, do I want to know how to survive? Do I want to know how to critique commercials better on TV? Do I want to know how to sing Kumbaya? What is it that I want out of this rights program? When I get finished, what is it supposed to have done for me? When I come out of this, am I supposed to be now prepared to prepare for manhood? Exactly what am I supposed to get out of this? And if you're creating them, then have your agenda when you go to those people you want to talk to, telling them what you want. And it could be individualized. Say there's only one of you in the community, or you're too old for that rights program. Then go to the individuals who are responsible, or for the individual who you consider to be a responsible elder, and ask them for a list of things, like a Boy Scout checklist, if you will, a list of things that you have to do that they have to check off. And we had 3 brothers who had graduated from college, 4 brothers who had graduated from college, who wanted to be parts of a rites of passage program. And they had elders, Enia and I, some folks in Carolina, and some folks in Texas, who put together this list for them. They wanted a men's rites of passage program, so we put together this list of things that they had to do within a 2-year period that we thought that would be. So they had to learn how to swim so many yards, horseback riding on the athletic side, learn how to make and become accurate with a bow and arrow. There were things that they had to read. There were distances that they had to walk, just had to run. One of the things had to find a compliment. Had to find somebody who wanted to build family with them and who thought as an African. That was one of their rights requirements. That was one of the requirements, which I don't consider unusual, because in traditional African society, which is what we should be aspiring to follow, you come out of the rights program, either you have or you are definitely looking for somebody to settle with immediately. So if that's the case for our ancestors, if it was good enough for them, I would suggest it is good enough for us. Know who your peers are. Of course, we need to know who the folks who run these programs are, but you need to know who your peers are. One of the best rites of passage programs that I've ever known fell apart for a number of years because of the expectations of the brothers who were responsible for the program. And I warned them. And the reason why I was able to warn them is that most of the boys who they were bringing into the program, I knew. They were not interested in the African Rites of Passage program. They were interested in a title or name, or the parents were interested in something for them to do over the summer so they could be kept busy. You want a serious program. And that program, at the end of the year, the brothers were so frustrated that they stopped, because they thought, then when they reconvened, restarted the program a few years later, well, more than a few years later, in fact, the first thing that they did was to interview the parents, interview the boys involved, because there was a certain mentality that they recognized that they needed to have among them in order for them not to be wasting their time. You don't want to be part of a program that is wasting your time. Life is too short to be wasting your time learning how to clown. We don't have time for that. Just telling the boy today, we have enough grown boys. We have plenty of those. We have ample number of grown boys. We need men. We need women. But I'm gonna let the sister, that's the sister's domain. We need men. We need men badly. Men who understand what the concept of man is. Men who are not compromised. Men who know how to tear stuff up if necessary, and not worry about the consequences, because what got torn up for a righteous reason. And we need men like that, because the boys need to see men so they'll know what to be like when they grow up. they don't see any men, if all they see is grown boys, then what's going to be their aspiration? To be even more sophisticated grown boys. We need men. So if your rites of passage program doesn't have a program to help you develop your manhood, you need to find something else. If the men who are in charge are of bad character, are not of good character, are not of uncompromising character, do not become involved in the program. I've seen very bad things come out of that. And that's not who I'd want to be teaching me anyway. I don't want anybody who's contradictory telling me what to do. I don't want anybody who doesn't have experience telling me what to do. Why would I, as somebody who's married for 10, 15 years, want to listen to the advice of somebody who's never been married? That wouldn't make sense. They've never been through the training. Why would I, as a new mother or a mother of 5, want to listen to the advice of children from somebody who's never had children? Why would I, as a warrior or even a soldier, want to listen to the advice of someone who's never been on the battlefield? That doesn't mean, like Ptah said, that doesn't mean that we can't learn from everybody. But in terms of having someone who I want to identify with, who I want to particularly teach me, show me the way, I want somebody who has experience in the way I'm trying to go. And there are ways for you to find that out. Study them, watch their relationships. If it's men, watch their relationships with women. Watch how they act toward women. Watch what they say after the women leave. Listen very carefully. What are their priorities? If there's a 2-hour discussion, is there any discussion about the defense of the community? About the issues in the community that need to be resolved, that they have plans and to begin to implement, apply some plans to solve it. A lot of people have hot air. A lot of people can talk. Like I said, and tell students all the time, you know, an idiot can read. But there's some things that an idiot can't do, and one of those is to think. This is my pet thing, security. Warriors are the servants of the people. They serve the community. That is your first and foremost priority, serving the community, which means, of course, you have to know what the community needs. And right now, one of our most important needs is defensive. Years ago, I used to go to events and things going on in people's homes, and there would be no security. Anybody could have walked in with a machete, just chopped up 10, 15 people before anybody was able to even begin to realize what was going on. There was no security. There was an event here where there was a facility and the girls' bathroom, the light outside of it and the light immediately inside of it were out. So you had little girls walking through the dark to get to the bathroom, and the guys sitting around there playing twiddlywinks with no security. You should never, I don't care how old you are, you can practice when you are a toddler if necessary. There should never be an event that you go through where part of your eyes, part of your vision isn't looking for something that's not quite right. Somebody who's not quite right. Somebody is moving too close to somebody. There should never be an event where you are, if you're not part of the security force, where you are not practicing security. There should never be an event that you go to where there are sisters, where a sister has to walk from that building to her car, pushing a stroller, and there's nobody walking with her. That should never happen in our community. We talk that talk. We're warriors. Yeah, we're warriors. Yeah, we're soldiers, but the application isn't there. I'm not seeing it being applied. Now, here in Atlanta, it's gotten better as a result of things that at least 3 of us have said. So now you go to events, at least major events, but it still hasn't become as good as it should, because if the mamas are having a cooking, a sewing circle, and they don't want you anywhere near the house, they don't want you listening to their conversation, then there should be security around that house. Somebody should be patrolling that perimeter until they're finished doing whatever it is that they do and say, okay, we're leaving. There should never be anything going on in the African-centered community where there is not security. There should never, ever, ever, unless I'm hearing somebody saying we're at peace, as long as we are at war, and that is until we attain sovereignty in the fullest extent of the word, there should never be any happening within the center community where security is not there. And I'm talking about everywhere from the door to the center of the audience. Because when we have events, there's security outside for the cars, for any threat that comes from outside. There's security when you walk into the door. So security is around the inside, if you will. And then every man and some of the women, because some of the women here pack. Any man who's in the audience, he's part of the security force automatically. All the young men involved, they're part of the security force as eyes, looking for anything that does not fit, that just doesn't seem right. And their job is to relate to any of the men who are official part of the security force, whether they're in uniform or not. We don't have the uniform thing. To let them know, that guy right there, he seems kind of strange. Well, I've seen him before, and he doesn't do what we do. That's security. Security is a network. It's not just one person or a team walking around with 9 sitting on their waist. Okay? Security is a network. It's a web of individuals operating in a situation to make sure that nothing goes wrong. So security is extremely important. And don't underage yourself saying that you're not qualified because you're not 18 or what have you. If you want some of the privileges of being an adult, which most children do, they want to be able to make the decision for themselves. They want to make the decision of what time they go to bed, what they eat, what clothes they wear, what car their parents drive. You want to make those decisions. Then if you're old enough to think about those decisions, you're old enough to think about the security in the situation that you're in, even if you're the only one there. You have to train yourself to listen, to think. They remove the games that teach boys distance and sound. They remove the games that teach boys contact, so you know pain and it doesn't throw you off. If you've never known pain, when you become a man, you stub your toe, you're through, at least for a while. But if you stubbed your toe, broke a bone, jammed a finger, etc., playing football, then those things aren't going to throw you off no more than a few seconds. So you have to understand why they've removed all of the football fields from our communities and replaced them with tennis courts, all the basketball courts in our community, because basketball in the black community is a contact sport. Why they've removed these and replaced it with golf ranges and tennis courts. Those are not contact sports. Those do not teach you about distance and speed. If you learn how to play football, then you have to judge your speed so that person who's running down the line, you have to judge your speed so you can catch them and tackle them before they get to a certain point. That's math. But it's a practice math. Anything, we need to bring tackle football back. That's a major lesson in and of itself. What is this tag stuff anywhere? I don't know. Okay, point made. I don't see any reason why young folks are not involved with security in their own way. How to be able to know in your house. You hear a sound outside, you'll be able to identify that sound, know the direction that it's coming from. You'll know every creak in your house. So if somebody's in the front room, you hear a creak, you should know where that person, exactly where that person is in that room. You should know some basic stuff in terms of home security, which is practice for event security. You should know that if somebody breaks into your house, you don't do what this idiot white women do on TV. You don't turn on the light, because then the person can see you, because you can see into the light, but they can't see into the dark. These are basic fundamental things that you should be thinking about, practicing, observing. These are security measures. So you would know that if the building that you were responsible for came under attack and there were a bunch of little children in there, you know not just to hide them, you know to hide them in the dark, because it's going to be more difficult to see into the dark than it will be to see into the light. That should be second nature. You should know that if you have a girl or a woman by your side, she's not supposed to walk out the front door first, because if there's a threat, then that threat's going to smack her in the face. You're supposed to be the one that gets smacked in the face, because you're supposed to be ready to deal with it. These are simple things that we have unlearned, trying to be these quote-unquote gentlemen that Europeans have created, which is a lie. There are so many. Somebody needs to sit down and do a class on proper security etiquette when you're in the presence of somebody else. You park your car, the door that she gets out of should be the one that's facing wherever it is that you're going. So she doesn't have to walk around on the blind side of the car to get into the car. You should park your car underneath the light. You walk out the house, the first thing that you do is you survey the area. Behind the bushes, underneath the car, looking for shadows, listening up and down the street to see if you hear any footsteps. To me, that's commonsensical security. But you have to practice it to the point where it becomes second nature. And then it gets applied in every other thing that you do relative to the security of the community. And no, I don't think anybody's too young to do that. I really, I mean, of course, a toddler, but I really don't think anybody's too young. I don't see any faces here that are too young to do that at all. Okay, and the last point that I want to make, which is maybe the most important point here, before I lose my voice, African-centered schools, African-centered education. Education is an important instrument, outside the family, for the transmission of the culture. Warriors are responsible for that. If your people don't know who they are, then what are you defending? If your people cannot possibly figure out who they are, what's the purpose? Why are you doing this? A warrior isn't a warrior without his people. Doesn't exist. No such thing. It's a joke. So you have a responsibility, not only have a responsibility to build these schools, but speaking to the brothers again, the women are the first teachers. I know you've heard that before. They're the first teachers. But if there's not discipline within that school setting, if there's not order within that school setting, if the children are unruly within that school setting, if they're not disciplined within that school setting, then the mamas can't teach. They're going to waste 3/4 of their time trying to create order. But if there's a man or a men's presence there, it's very different. I've watched this in action. It's very different. I've taught at a number of different schools. And it's very different, not that I'm all of that, but it's very different when I'm there, even if I'm not in the classroom teaching, than when I'm not there, even when they can't see me. Because I say, especially now, it used to be just boys. But I'm seeing girls acting in the same way, sometimes doing it a little different way, but acting in the same way overall. I say boys know how crazy they are. They know how strong they are. They know what they can do. But they know that men are a little bit crazier. And they don't quite know how much crazier, but they know that they're crazier. And often they don't want to test that. They'll test it on the mamas, but they won't test it on a man because it's not going to go but so far. It's not going to go but so far. And if you don't understand that, when you become a man, you will understand that. You understand your strength, you understand your power, you understand what you're supposed to be about, you understand the difference between you and a boy. And there's supposed to be differences. Different ages, different intellects, different everything. So they're supposed to be different. But you as a man, when you become a man, you're supposed to be responsible for order and discipline in your community. That's in between provide and protect. And mama, that's not a sexist statement, because I've never known a black woman who did not provide. I've never known a black woman who did not protect. We're just talking about what is your primary role, because if the mama is breastfeeding, then she shouldn't have any issue, well, she shouldn't have to focus also on trying to defend the door. If mamas are teaching in the classroom, she shouldn't have to worry about some student who will not stop making noise. Now that common sense to me. We've broken away from that common sense. We have to return that common sense, and it can only come through example. And that also applies now. So if you're in a school setting and you have peers who look up to you and they're acting up, then assume your role and your responsibility. Not arrogantly, like I'm better than you, but a system and understanding. You're here to learn. Yeah, there's time to play, but you're here to learn. You're disrupting the class. You're not learning anything. You're at the same point you are now as you were 8 months ago at the beginning of the school year, because you're acting up. You need to stop. We have a particular role, and there's nothing wrong with that role. And at first, you may feel like I did when our daughter was getting to get a little older, I guess when she was moving into being a toddler, as well as with students here, where you're sitting there saying, man, why do I have to be the bad guy all the time? Why have to be the one that applies the discipline all the time? Why can't, I have more fun? Like the mamas are having, which they're not really having fun, but that's what you see. And then after a while, you realize, oh, I'm supposed to do this. Okay, shut up and get back to work. So expect it to be quite challenging, the role of being a man, the role of creating a school. If we cannot create and maintain our own schools, we've lost. We've lost. Completely and totally lost. And it takes a lot to create a school. It takes a lot to maintain a school. It takes a lot to do that for years and years and years and years. And to pass that on to men and women who also know what they're doing and know that they're African and are uncompromising. But somebody's got to start it. Somebody has to start these institutions. Bobby E. Wright, who coined the word menticide, who, if you will, created, if you will, as far as I'm concerned, the word menticide. He said that menticide, which is when menticide, to kill your mind. Side means to kill. Suicide, homicide, fratricide. Side means to kill. It's a suffix that means to kill. Menticide, to kill your mind. So essentially, they remove what's African from your mind and replace it not with what's European, but with how Europeans want you to see yourself. Because Europeans don't look at themselves the same way they want you to look at yourself. So that's removed. Menticide is a bad thing. If you cannot remove that, if you can't stop that from passing on from generation to generation, if you can't build, as Bobby E. Wright said, the institutions, menticide is maintained through Europeans controlling of our institutions. So they dictate what information and what ideas are passed on to us in the school system. They control our family structure, and if our family started producing warriors in numbers with them knowing them, then they would try to find a way through the institution of the family, the institutions that control the family, like Department of Children and Family Services, to tear that up. They control our economic institution. They control how we think about money, the relationships that exist between us that facilitate, that make our money into currency that spreads from one to the other. They control that institution. So just building the schools isn't good enough. The goal has to be to control the educational institution itself in the center community everywhere. Everywhere it exists. I'm not worried about the conscious community right now. I'm not worried about African Americans right now. I'm not worried about Europeans. I'm not worried about anybody in our community except for the center community, because we have enough problems on our own. We're supposed to be the tip top of the character, or good character. We're supposed to be setting the standard, setting the model. So I'm going to worry about us right now, because if we do it well enough, then maybe some folks who are looking at the quote-unquote conscious community or looking at just regular African Americans will say, well, that's weak. Something's wrong with that. That's compromise. But they have to have somewhere to go. And if we're not doing what we need to do, if we're not strong as we need to be, then if they come in our direction, they're going to turn around and go back. Who wants to be around weak people? Except somebody who glorifies or is weak. Okay. So, with that said, I think it's about 12 after. And I don't see any. I don't see any questions or any thoughts. Anybody have anything they want to ask or say or Honey?
I had a question. So you said accountability is our worst flaw as an African people. And I was just going to ask you, in your own words, what do you think our best flaw is as African people right now?
Resilience. I love our resilience. You knock us down, we get back up. You knock us down, we get back up. Now, we might be wobbling a little bit, not quite knowing what direction to take, but we get back up. Your job, guy, your primary job, Sister Sudai, your primary job is to provide that guidance. By example, because you don't get knocked down. You're human. You don't get knocked down. You don't get hurt by people. You don't get stunned by people. You don't get surprised by people. And people are going to watch how you respond to that, how you act, how long you stay down, how deep you fall down, how high you rise. People are looking to you for guidance, whether you know that they're there or not. They're going to be watching, so they're going to want to know. So, and that makes it difficult for people who are in leadership positions, especially leadership positions that you didn't go and try to create for yourself. You're just trying to be you. It's sort of like psychiatrists, psychologists. The only difference between one and another is a medical degree. Psychiatrists, psychologists had the highest suicide rate of any profession in the country. I found it out when I was a psychology major. The reason was that they were listening to everybody else's problem, but there was nobody listening to theirs. So fulfilling that leadership role puts you in a position where sometimes you're not going to be able to just quit. Just stop and say, okay, I had too much of this. I can't take any more of this right now. I can't do this. Let me stop, go hide someplace. Okay. You're not going to be able to do that as easily as somebody who isn't as privileged as you. Okay. So knowing that, that's a warning, which will help you become more resilient. One of the reasons why I asked everybody here, do you know everybody here? Because it's very helpful when you have people like these folks here who you really get frustrated and sick and tired of fighting for people many times, seem like they want to die. They want to be controlled by Urugu. You're going to get tired of that. You're going to need somebody to talk to who understands and feels the same way so that you can work through it together. And both of you go about your business stronger than ever before. And so for me, it's resilience. I love the resilience of African people. It's beautiful. We shouldn't be here. It's truly beautiful.
Good answer.
Answer that. Yes, Mama. I can't hear you. It's like your microphone isn't on. I can't hear you at all.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I've been speaking with some parents that's very frustrated with the public school system. So I've been talking with them about homeschooling, but we don't get very far because their questions continue to be, well, will my child be able to pass the certification test? And a lot of questions along those lines. Will they be up with the other students? Will the public school take them back if I have to take them back? Mm-hmm. And what about when if they want to go to college? Mm-hmm. Any suggestions?
Well, first, studies show, and I'd have to dig to be able to present evidence, but studies show that children who are homeschooled, and that's what white folks are doing. Children who are homeschooled, they score higher on the tests than children who are in public or private school. They score higher on all the tests. College, national, they score higher on all of those tests, higher than public and private educated children on all those tests. And I believe it's because the conversation is more conducive to thinking. So you're engaging them in a process that develops their thinking. So that process of elimination on the test and all the rest of that, it's easier for them to do. They're better prepared for that. So the children homeschool, I mean, just by that fact, if test scores are the primary concern of, say, one individual, whatever, they score higher. They can go research that. That's a fact. The issue of the public school letting them back in, that's a hard one, because the public school doesn't like children being homeschooled, of course. That's money. Some of them give them a hard time, but we have never had a student, and we've had quite a few students who went back to public school who had a problem getting in. We have, I need to ask any guy about that, but I'm not aware of one who went back to public school and was demoted. Okay. Because the first thing they do when you return, because they really don't want you here and they want to show you how angry they are, is they want to hand you a bunch of tests. Of course, if you've been homeschooled and it's been done well, then you're going to do okay or better than okay on the exams. But the parent can't expect to leave a system that is dedicated to diseducating our children, and then expect for it to be waiting for them open arms. You know, as far as they're concerned, you deserted us. You took money from us, and you know how money is to capitalists. You took money from us. So I've never heard of a public school that welcomed back a child who had been homeschooled, or welcomed a childhood into their school who was homeschooled with open arms. That's something that we can't guarantee. But when they go in and take the test, then they're, you know, ahead of the game. Those who did the work, the exception being, in our experience, those children who came here who were determined not to learn. So that was just an ongoing battle with them, and when they ended up winning the battle, enough relatives or whatever got them get back into public school, then that was reflected. But even there, I don't remember, again, I have to ask Ian, I don't remember any of them being demoted. And I'll argue maybe that's because the public school is so into just passing children on. At whatever age you're supposed to be, whatever grade you're supposed to be based upon the age, they'll just put you in there. That saves them time and money. I don't think I answered everything. The school system let in. The biggest problem that I've heard from parents, the biggest complaint I've heard is a social life. That they're not getting enough, they won't have enough friends and all the rest of that, right? Now, that's the biggest complaint that I've heard. And there's, you know, there may be some validity to it. But I didn't feel bad about it relative to our daughter, even though she had plenty of classmates. I didn't feel bad about it relative to our daughter because I knew what she was going to get socialized into. I knew what was being promoted with the children in the public school system. And that wasn't their fault. They did not raise themselves. But I knew I was willing, as a responsible adult who didn't want my child to get lost in that insanity, I was willing to sacrifice her frustration over not being able to go to this party or that party or be involved in this organization. But also in the public school system now, at least in it may be Georgia, but I think it's just Atlanta, it may be Georgia. If your child is in, say, middle school, then by law, the middle school has to allow your child to play on the play basketball. The university varsity has allowed them to play football, has allowed them to be a member of the chess club, has allowed them to be a member of the school newspaper or what have you. So by law, they are required to allow them to do that. But I'm not all excited about the idea of, I really am not bothered by children not receiving that social life. And there are multiple ways to do that. You have homeschool associations, you have other children in the community, you have activities. You know, you have lots of ways to bring children of the same age together. But I want to be very selective. We've gotten so far away from, because we're acting like our children are our friends. My children are my friends. I tell them all the time, I'm not your friend. Now, if we happen to grow into friends when you get older and we finish all this, that's fine and dandy. But right now, I'm not your friend. I'm your parent. I'm your teacher. I would make different decisions about what you do or do not have to do if we were friends. And I need that barrier. I need that boundary. So we've gotten so far away from helping our children select friends, from keeping bad influences away from them. We're allowing them to make decisions that children don't have the maturity experience to do. That's not a negative statement about children. They are children. They're supposed to not have that maturity. They're not old enough. Mama Rima tells me stuff that I'm not ready. I mean, I'm not capable of really thinking about yet because I'm not her age. I don't have her experience on the front line. I don't have her knowledge base. I don't have her maturity. I'm 61 years old. But somebody who's 81 runs circles around me. But we're acting like, and I say this to the children when they want to question me on this. I say, okay, you have a little sister, little brother. You can take candy from whenever you want to because you can outthink them any day. How can you do that? Because you have more maturity, more experience, because you're older than them. So why doesn't that apply to your parents who are older than you? Silence is what occurs. So we have to, I think it's very important for parents to be able to pick who their children are around, what children their children are around. Because once the damage is done, it's too late. You bring in somebody who's a little bit older or a little bit more popular, and they bring some ideas that go against what it means to be African, your child's gone. Gone real quick. Because they want that freedom. They read that as freedom. They read that as power. And they read the situation they're in as containment, constraint, prison. So anybody who will allow them that possibility of freedom, whatever that may happen to mean, they're gone. And they may know you well enough to continue to pretend to be African, but their whole idea, their whole vision, their whole dream is on escape. Because you allowed that to be introduced to them. And so I have no problem whatsoever with saying, well, you know, that's life. I'm sorry. You chose me for your father before you came here. And I'm not going to let you do that. You know, I might feel bad about it for a few seconds, but I know in the end, I can answer to the ancestors and say that I did my best. And in doing my best, I wasn't compromised with you. And that applies to any child who comes to us now. So that social life thing, I think most of us adults know that it's not all it's cracked up to be. And that the definition of what it means to be a friend now is very different than what it was to be a friend when we were coming up. Friendship was proven. Now it's just the number of likes that you get, or the number of calls that you get, or how much money you can spend on me, or what have you. So we have to be responsible for absorbing the pain from having to be mean, having to make those decisions that children have been taught that they're supposed to make for themselves, these critical decisions, and just going about our business knowing that we're right. And a lot of adults aren't willing to do that. There's I think it's from the islands, but there's an old saying that says you can cry now or you can cry later. The point being, you're going to cry. You're going to cry. Now the question is, are you going to cry because you feel bad because you're having to discipline your child? It's hurt me. What is hurt you? Or are you going to cry as they haul your child off to prison? Because you didn't discipline them when they were young. And I'm not, they're talking about some spanking or some beating. When you didn't provide discipline from them when they were young, and they got free, and they did exactly what they're supposed to do, act like fools in this culture. Mm-hmm. And because they're not in charge of this culture, you can cry as you see them locked up permanently. You're going to cry. Those parents need to ask themselves the question. And I've seen some parents who I'm like, man, it's like it's painful for me to tell your child to raise their voice, or to don't interrupt any of y'all when she's talking, or to make sure you look through the blinds before you go outside. It's like for them to even be told something to do is painful to them. I'm saying when your child turns 15, 16, 17, when they get out here, there's another African proverb that speaks to children who are spoiled, hate their spoiler. Hate the person who did it to them. And when you look at children who are spoiled, when they become adults, most of them have absolutely no respect for their parents. They treat them like, I guess I'd say, crap. They run all over them. They show them no respect. They expect them to still respond to them the way that they did when they were young. I've seen it on so many children who were spoiled. So now the parent didn't cry before, so now in this situation the parent is crying again. I'm sure if you go on YouTube, you can probably find a lot of videos of children essentially beating their parent down. Saw one the other day of this grown woman, her mother must have been in her 60s. She's beating on her mother on a bus, public transportation bus, dragging her off the bus, making her get off the bus. Mom screaming like I don't know what. And this is her daughter who she spoiled. There are lots of ways to spoil children. And the front line can't tolerate that because spoiled children are self-centered. Spoiled children aren't going to watch out for a community or think of a community first. They're going to think of themselves first. I mean, I got to stop playing this game to watch the west side of the house in case somebody comes. You better get out of here with that. I'm playing my game. After everybody in the house is dead, then there's some sorrow. So on the front line, there's no place, there's no room for spoiledness. And we can't bring our children up like that if we're talking about building a nation. You know, it may be painful, it may be something that there's so much peer pressure among adults to do. We have to ask ourselves what kind of future we want for our people. Do we want the kind of future that disciplined children bring? Or do we want the kind of future that spoiled children bring? What is it that we want 7 generations down the road? What kind of a people do we want? And children are smart. And I'm not just saying that. Our children are genius. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That's part of that resilience. Our children are genius. And our children are going to take what they have learned and how they've been taught, and they're going to take it to the next level of spoiledness. Because they're going to perfect what they know, and that's going to be all they know. So they're going to make the children who are spoiled today look like highly disciplined children. And that's going to be a community. So everybody essentially, not every single person, but the vast majority of people are going to be doing this. And those of us who are in our 50s and 60s, we have seen the level of spoilage in the community increase from one generation to the next. We've seen this. When I was these guys' age, there was one girl who I knew in our entire neighborhood who was spoiled. Her father had been in a car accident when she was young. Her mother had gotten this big settlement and this big insurance claim, money, whatever. And she had spoiled Denise Olsen. She had spoiled this girl bad. Nobody else could deal with her. Nobody else could deal with her. Every other child in the community, to varying degrees, was disciplined. Now look around, you might find one or two children who is not. This has occurred over literally two and a half generations. There's nothing changing it. It's not stopping. It's not slowing down. So being the social scientist you are, what is it going to look like in another generation? You should be able to project ahead and see what's coming and see what you're in for. Because you got to be even stronger than the adults. Now, if you want to be African, you got to be stronger than us, because what's going to be put in your face is going to be even greater than what we've had to deal with in our face. And I see time is gone. Well, as of this point, I really would like to look at the last class as, I got to talk to EDI. The last class is maybe being adding on an additional half hour. So maybe the last class, which is 2 classes from now, we'll do an hour's presentation, and then maybe take 15, 20 minutes so I can get out of this chair for a little bit, and then come back maybe 45, 60 minutes to finish it up on the last class. So whatever you have, and especially I would like to know from the young folks in terms of the questions that I posed today for you, the statements that I posed today, particularly questions, what your thoughts are on those. I really would like to know what you're doing. And not just because I want to hear you or make you think like you're somebody because I'm hearing your voice, but it'll give me, what you say will give me material when I step back in the classroom the week after the last class day. Because what we talk about here, I talk about in the class. I talk about in the classroom. This is a continuous process. It's not just me and you. What we talk about here goes far beyond this evening, far beyond this hour and a half. So I would really like to know what you think, because I would like to deliver that word back to the students that we have here and see what they thought. And maybe if I have time, I'll ask them what they think, and maybe I can bring you a collective answer from them. But I would prefer to use that time listening to your thoughts. So think about this, and there's no right or wrong answer. There are righteous and unrighteous answers, but there's no right or wrong answer. I want to know what you think and what you're going to do. Okay. So on that note, family, warriors, Safo, Ketu, we will hope that you have a wonderful next 6 days, and we'll see you on next Wednesday, same time, same channel. Bibi Fawohodie.
Bibi Fawohodie, Medasika.
I see.
Bibi Fawohodie.
Family.
John Henry Historical Society. Metro.
Greetings.
Yabesha.
Yo. Otabo.
Jumbo.
Jumbo. Kwaheri.
Harry.